Richard Burnett is Chief Executive of the Road Haulage Association. Morning, Richard. Hi.
Morning, Nicky.
Hi. And Tim Morris, CEO of UK Major Ports Group. Hi, Tim.
Good morning.
It'd be great to hear an exchange of thoughts on this between you. Richard, what's it like at the moment and why?
Well, I guess it's pretty chaotic, and if you're alluding to, the ports and the issues that we're having with containers, then I think that's part of a perfect storm, which has happened because of the COVID pandemic. We saw container volume drop off a cliff early in the pandemic. We're seeing that restocking of the supply chain, globally. And I think, we also saw sort of empty containers not being repatriated either. So we've got empties in the wrong place. They're blocking the quayside. And what we're seeing is that build now in terms of volume coming back in, build for Christmas, but also build for transition all at the same time. And, the ports are struggling to cope with that productivity, being able to keep on top of, emptying ships and then putting empties back onto ships. And that's creating significant delays. And it doesn't look as though we're going to get on top of this problem for probably the next 3-4 months. And I think with transition in between, that's going to exacerbate the problem, even further. So challenging times, Nicky.
Oh, goodness me. The next 3-4 months, Tim, what's it going to be like? Because as Richard pointed out there, it's a perfect storm at the moment. Christmas rush, coronavirus, all the supply chain disruption, customs, and now the uncertainty of a no-deal Brexit. My goodness me.
So I think I'd agree with Richard about the building blocks of this current situation, which are essentially global, Nicky. The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented volatility in global supply chains. In the early part of the pandemic, that caused a lot of fluctuation in levels of trade. But what we're now seeing, and indeed this is not just in the UK, but in Europe and in North America as well, is a real surge in demand for the types of goods that travel in the back of containers. And you're seeing issues around global supply chains, not just here in the UK, but in Europe and North America, and particularly in Asia at their loading points. So I think what we are seeing that this very significant change, which has local factors as well. And Richard is absolutely right to point out that what we're seeing at ports are people stock building ahead of the 1st of January imposition of new border requirements. The position from inside the ports is that we are starting to see improvement in levels of stock, levels of boxes, people turning around boxes quicker. But that's absolutely not to say that there's nothing to worry about. This is a situation that's accumulated over several months. It will take some months to work through. It's not an overnight solution, but people are working very hard in the ports and Richard's members as well, rail industry, etc., to improve the situation.
Sure, a number of factors, as you say. So, Richard, what's it going to mean for our listeners over the next 3-4 months?
Well, look, the practical side of this is it's going to mean that you're not going to get the stuff that you want when you want it, and that isn't just through container ports. It's also through the short straits in terms of the imports that we bring in from Europe on road. This friction that we're putting in because of the customs process, and this is whether there's a deal or not. The only way that we're going to ease that friction is if we get a deal with an implementation period that allows both the EU and the UK to transition smoothly. And at the moment, that doesn't look likely. So, we're going to see a significant sort of first quarter, chaotic first quarter of next year as these processes, the customs declarations kick in. We've got a shortage of customs agents to be able to process this. So for some businesses, they might not even be able to trade. Volume drops. We're a volume-based industry. If that doesn't go into manufacturing or into the retail supply chain, then that equals jobs, doesn't it? Dropping volume has an impact on jobs. So this is likely to be a very, very chaotic time. Certainly, if we don't get a deal, that's for sure.
Tim, what are we on the brink of? Tim Morris.
So I think a really important thing to try and get across to your listeners, Nicky, is that whether there's a deal or not, border arrangements are going to change. The deal isn't about whether the current status quo can continue. It's about some of the aspects of the implementation of us UK being outside the customs union. So 95% of the new border requirements that the government has been talking about and releasing remain the same whether there's a deal or not. So it's incredibly important that even at this late stage, the businesses are doing everything that they can to prepare for the new systems and processes. As Rich has pointed out, this is not business as usual, particularly if you've been using truck traffic where Dover-Calais has essentially acted as just an extension of a road. There are changes coming to that. Some of the ports elsewhere in the UK already handle significant quantities of global trade. They're very busy, but they have capacity and they know what they're doing. But there is still important things for businesses, ports, and government itself to do to make sure that we're in the best place to mitigate, albeit not completely remove, the chance of disruption as we head into 2021.
What's it going to mean for food? For example, foodstuffs, with a shorter shelf life as well. Which particular foodstuffs do you think will be hit by this, as far as the consumers listening now are concerned?
Well, Nicky, from my perspective, we're dealing with a lot of European hauliers who are working with food manufacturers across Europe. And, certainly for fresh and chill, if you think about, the fresh product that comes from Spain, vegetables, fresh fruit, etc., but also meats potentially as well. Those manufacturers are really concerned about the flow through the Calais Straits. They're concerned about vehicles being tied up. And if you've got, a shelf life of 5 to 7 days and you've got a vehicle that's sitting in a queue for 2 days, then effectively that product is written off. And that responsibility is the food manufacturer, not the haulier, because they'll refuse to take it, and not the retailer. So those manufacturers are actually saying, look, we're considering cutting supply by as much as 50% in the first 2 months of next year, because we can't afford the write-off of those sorts of products. Now, that's a significant issue when you've got 30% of our food supplied from Europe. And
this isn't just Remainer moaning. These are genuine concerns. Yeah.
Look, I've been in logistics for 35 years, Nicky, and, I've ran operations. I understand the practical sides of what, decisions business make from a financial perspective. This isn't scaremongering. This is what businesses do when they're faced with, financial burdens that they can't afford to take. And, this is the impact of putting the friction in place. It's the practical side of Brexit, unfortunately.
How worried are you on a scale of 1 to 10, just before we leave it, about the next few months?
8 to 9.
Tim?
I think if you're not concerned, you haven't been paying attention. I think what we are heading towards, and perhaps not in the most organised way, is some rethinking about how we trade with Europe, we trade with the world. We bring meat from New Zealand and Argentina, for example. But we need to think about how that works in a world where the conditions around the borders have changed. I mean, logistics companies haven't dreamed this up. This is the political settlement that we all have to work within.
Okay, and we have to address the niceties as well of World Trade Organization rules. Thank you both very much indeed. Most interesting. Richard Burnett, Chief Executive of the Road Haulage Association, and Tim Morris, CEO of UK Major Ports Group.